Hello everyone, this is the presentation of the final report of system engineering, which refers to the virtual reality video game system study, and I'm the Shankyu. First of all is my introduction of the proposal of this paper. In this case study, we will treat the virtual reality video game industry as one single system, which includes the hardware system, which about like the VR headset, the consoles of or the PC which VR games can run on it, and the controllers, and about the software system, and those system will contain subsystem including the designing and the testing of each part. To be particular in this paper, the future and the life cycle of virtual reality technology will also be discussed. And there are some kind of VR devices and some sort of software and games which have been applied in the market. For example, in this paper we will use those existing products such as Index or Virtual Boy as an example to show the structure of the VR game industry, both in like beneficial, like the advantage and the disadvantage of the VR game system compared to the traditional video game system. First of all, let's talk about like the background of virtual reality game system. The definition of virtual reality is kind of artificial experience which simulated by machine, and it can be similar to or completely different from the real world. Most of those experience is produced by a set of VR system which contains the hardware and software part. The VR game system in this paper refers to one kind of application of virtual reality in entertainment application, which is the VR game system. For example, this is the VR game system, the hardware of the VR game system. Currently, the standard VR system used either virtual reality headset or multi-project environment to generate realistic images, sounds, and other sensations that simulate a user's physical presence in a virtual environment. For example, the Valve Index we can see here is the headset of the Valve Index, and this is the two controllers, and this is actually two speakers, but the speakers are not actually the essential part of the VR game system, but the headset and the controllers are the most important part in the hardware of the virtual reality system. Most of the VR game system in this paper contains the headset and controllers. However, the software, which refers to the video games, the VR video games, and the consoles or the PC, like the one which run on the software and the VR games, are also important part of the VR game system. This technology integrates the latest development of computer graphics, computer simulation, artificial intelligence, sensing, display, and networking parallel processing technologies. This is a high-tech simulation system generated by computer technology, so it's born from the computer technology. Actually, it comes from like the birth of the VR system also got a really big connection with the graphic cards, the graphic performance of the video games. Then let's talk about the history of the VR virtual reality system. Before the 1915s, the virtual reality system is like an idea instead of a real thing, seen like an idea in the scientific fiction novels. In the Stanley G science fiction novel Pygmalion Spectators, which is considered as the first science fiction which worked to explore the virtual reality. This short story describes the details in detail virtual reality system based on smell, touch, and goggles. After the 1915, the first achievable VR system was developed. Actually, in the Stanley G. Morton Halleck wrote in 1915 of an experience theater that could compress all the scenes in an effective manner, and in 1962 he built a prototype of his vision. Then the virtual reality system had a good development. The first video game, Pong, in 1958 was invented. Although the first video game, Pong, was run on an oscilloscope which can only display the simplest images, people can now wait to play the video games on the other master visual, also including the VR system. However, the development of the VR system just started because of the Atari shock in 1983. Actually, Atari was the first video game company which founded the research lab in 1982, but the lab was closed after 2 years due to the Atari shock. The video game crash of 1983 was happened because of the Atari's loss of publishing control, and this results that most of the video game system, including hardware and software companies in North America, has been crashed until the beginning of the 21st century. And it also caused that all video game companies working on the consoles that or publishing a specific department in their own company to check the content of those publishing video games. Because of the Atari shock in 1983, the video game industry in North America just crashed. So the center of the video game moved to the Japan. Sega was the first Japanese video game which tried to develop the technology of VR game system. In 1991, Sega announced the Sega VR headset for arcade games and the Mega Drive console. It used LCD screen in stereo headphones and sensors that allows the system to track and react the movement of the user's head. Because Sega is not only good at selling copies of video games, but also one of the biggest amusement arcade and video game consoles manufacturer. They developed their VR techniques and applied it upon their amusement arcades since that. In that period of time, PC or game console did not have superior performance compared to arcades. Then, after Sega entered the VR system, the Nintendo also get in. Because of the Atari's shock, Nintendo turned itself to be the biggest game company in this world at that period of time. As a bigger show, Nintendo's Virtual Boy already got a kind of portable headset with a traditional controller, which is very similar to the modern VR game system. The player uses the controller as like a head-mounted display, placing their head against the eyepiece to see a red monochrome display. It still focused on the virtual display in 3D, but the technology of the 3D before 2000 was also a new technology. Some of the players in that period of time still thought that 2D display is the only way for the video games. The Virtual Boy was panned by critics and was a commercial failure even after repeated price drops. Its failure is believed to be due to its high price. Its display screen is unbelievable. Its awful 3D effect and lack of true probability. And it will also cause some kind of health problem. And it have a lot of low quality games. In the 21 after enter the 21st century, for the first decade of 21st century, public and investment were indifferences to the commercially available VR technology. They are more excited about the 3D performance. However, after the rapid evolution of graphic display technology, industry knows that this is a time for developing VR techniques. 2010 sees a new wave for the VR game system. Lots of companies start their project of VR game system. The Oculus Rift was seen as the first modern VR game system with many playable VR games. In the 2012, the Rift is presented for the first time at the E3 video game trade show by Carmack. Thus, the VR game system, after decades of silences, come back in the view of video game players. Meanwhile, because of John Carmack, known as the father of modern 3D games, the industry got their confidence on the VR game set. Actually, Facebook just purchased the Oculus VR in 2014. Then the biggest game company in this world, Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, all of them just entered the VR game system industry. However, Nintendo has faced the failure of the Virtual Boy, so they just feel bad about it. So, but the Sony in 2014, Sony announced the Project Morpheus, its code name for the PSVR, a virtual reality set for the PlayStation 4 video game console. Until now, the video game companies such as Valve, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sega are still the most encouraged company in developing VR game systems. So 2.3 Development of Virtual Reality Game System. Video game system is a complex system which including the interaction between the consumer and developers. And the revolution of image technology makes a video game not only an entertainment way, but also a machine of building dreams. With the help of VR game system, players can feel that they are completely part of the game, just like the movie Ready Player One. And for now, in the 2020, there are plenty of modern VR game systems with various kind of VR games, such as Half-Life Alyx, and we will talk about it later. For the first stage, concept development, the first phase is needs and size. After decades development of technology in graphic display, the VR game system seems to be an achievable way of entertainment. Players are dreaming that one day they can really enter the fantastic world built by video games and movies. Modern VR game systems show that this dream can be possible, and such an experience is one of them that players can never get from the traditional video game. Meanwhile, the technology of VR game system have been developed into a higher level. that are able to satisfy people's requirement of VR game system. Compared to traditional VR games, video games, VR game systems have a magnificent performance on the interaction with the machine and players, which makes players feel that they are real in a virtual world. Meanwhile, with the help of VR games, VR headset, and VR controllers, the virtual world is so close that the player can even touch everything and capture the tiniest details within the world. For the second phase, concept exploration, a reasonable VR game system requires harmony interaction between hardware and software. The interactions between human beings and machines, which including UI designs and input-output, will cause a revolution in the video game software design. For a new system like VR game systems, the old way of operation, which are designed mouse or traditional game controllers, are not fit anymore. Fortunately, people have developed a system of controllers that can capture the movement of fingers, which increase the experience of VR game. For example, the Half-Life Alyx is the first AAA video game, which only serves on VR game system. And because of its perfectly performance, it caused the sold out of the value index in most of countries, even if the index is much expensive than a traditional console. A good VR game can have a huge influence on sale of VR game system. The success of Valve Index and Half-Life Alyx shows that players are actually happy to pay more money for a better experience. For the last phase, concept deflation, it has an optimistic future of virtual reality, that everything just begins. As the technology development, even though the cost of developing VR game system is higher than traditional one for now, but eventually they will be the same, and even the cost of developing VR game will be lower than developing traditional video game. For example, the biggest problem for traditional video game is that the performance of video have went to a limitation in development of graphic card, which has been stuck. For example, a player can easily tell the differences between the Halo 1 and Halo 4, since the light effect and the bordering of two Master Chief is quite different. The Halo 1 is quite simple and the Halo 4 is much more complex. However, for the second decade in 21st century, the Halo 4, the Master Chief in Halo 4 and the Master Chief in the most recent Halo game, Halo Infinite, looks pretty thin, and even the player cannot tell the accurate differences between these two bordering. For the second stage, engineering development, first phase is advanced development. Risk management is the first thing that will be considered in the stage of advanced development. As a prototype, the private eye, which is developed by RTL technology, which produced a 3D stereoscope head tracking prototype called Private Eye, first in a tech game, seeking funding and partnership by which develop it into a commercial technology. And they found Nintendo. Nintendo instantly received the Private Eye, and they thought they can use this technology in a proper way. And even if the Virtual Boy failed, they could still use the technology. in other places. Based on the Private Eye prototype, Nintendo spent 4 years and eventually built a manufacturing plant in China and worked to turn its VR32 version into an affordable and health-conscious console design. As we all know, the Virtual Boy was panned by critics and tends to be a commercial failure. Actually, it's really weird since Nintendo itself is one of the most famous game developer in this world. So actually they have the ability to build a great VR game in their own VR game system, but they failed. So for a VR game system, the test of prototype should contain both a test of hardware but also a consideration of combined games, because one of the failure of reason of the Virtual Boy is the low quality games. For the engineering design, the engineering design phase, there are considerations like the UI interface, environment interface, modular design, and assembly and installation issues. In a VR game system, the most significant change compared to a traditional VR game system is the change of the user interface. For example, in a traditional VR game system, they are using controllers, controller pad, mouses, and keyboard. However, for the VR game system, the outputs alert to the headsets and the controller. For example, when Valve is developing the Half-Life Alyx, they found that Half-Life system was a surprisingly natural fit for VR, but that VR affects almost every aspect of the design. For example, shooting in VR, which requires the player to physically position their hand in spaces, is a different experience from aiming with traditional mouse and keyboard control. In the figure, the hand of game character are directly controlled by the VR game system controller, and game player can use their own finger to achieve a lot of actions such as moving the finger, throw away grenades, or even toes juggling during the playing process, which can never be achieved in a traditional video game. Meanwhile, because of the modular design, for most of the existing VR game systems, the controllers are designed in a similar appearance and similar function. For example, the controller of the Oculus Rift and the controller of HTC Vive. Such a modular design can help companies decrease the cost of both developing of hardware and software. Meanwhile, such a modular design can help the test engineer to find out the particular problem. And for the last phase, integration and evaluation. In the integration and evaluation phase, the prototype is going to be tested as a whole system in order to evaluate the performance of the whole system. The entire source of the Rift DK1 Development Kit 1 was released to the public in September 2014, including the firmware, schematics, and mechanical for the device. Meanwhile, they also offered the SDK to the developers of the Oculus Rift. By collecting reviews from the other developers, The developers in Oculus Rift can easily determine the performance of the whole system. Based on those reviews, they can update their SDK and hardware and share the new updates to others to get into a beneficial circle. Meanwhile, since the Oculus Rift is a crowdfunding program, they are free to accept any failure before the production phase and fix the problem in a rapid speed. And we go to the final stage, post-development stage. First phase is production. In the first phase of production, we got affordability, reliability, and safety. For the affordability, there are solutions that expanding the production lines to reduce the margin cost. However, this is the VR game system is a new system, so it is hard to build a completely new production line. So the lack of production line will cause the lack of the productions. For example, the game Half-Life Alyx caused the sort-off of the WoW index. Such a release of the killer app in VR game system is a hard test of the affordability of production factories. The lack of production even continued for more than half a year. For the reliability and safety consideration, since VR game system is a home entertainment system, it should be reliable and safe enough for people and teenagers, since teenagers are more effective than adults in the VR environment. VR places user directly into a media contact, potentially making the experience very valid and real for children. The last phase is operation support. The effort required for system installation depends on the degree of physical and functional integration that has been accomplished at the production facility. Hardware such as hardware in VR game system need to have the ability to run the games which will be released in 2 or 3 years, or have a pre-planned product improvement that can offer players a free update or exchange to get a better experience. For software updates, the VR game system company need to release the most recent updates regularly in order to make sure the software is in a good condition. There are some challenges of the VR game system. The first challenge is the physical spaces requirement of VR game system. Compared to the traditional video game system, the physical space required of VR game system is much larger. Players need to at least 5 to 10 meters square of clear room to operation. However, the traditional video game with console and controller only need a space to place the screen and a place to sit down. Meanwhile, the VR game system requires a total clear space since the player with VR game headset can either realize or see or avoid the object in real world, and which will cause them injured. One of the solutions is used in Half-Life Alyx. Player can opt to use analog stick on the VR controller to move Alyx. Use teleporting to move the player between the locations. The other way is just like the movie Ready Player One, an all-way running pad. However, this required a strong connection between the simulator and the VR game, and the developer need to contribute a good universal setting for all the plans of VR game system. As such a high price will make consumer feel hesitate. And the other challenge is the health and safety challenge. There are many health and safety considerations of virtual reality, such as the virtual reality sickness, also known as cybersickness, occurred when a person exposure to a virtual environment causes symptoms similar to motion sickness. The last change is the context reviewing. Depending on what image they are seeing, virtual reality can bring in waves of emotion more than just look at the photo or watching videos. This is a common problem that happens in both traditional video game system and VR game system. But since the VR game system might bring player a much more violent or scary experience, the content reviewing need to be much stricter, harsher than traditional video game to keep the mental health of players. Through this VR game systems case study, and then the knowledge of concept development stage, engineering development stage, and post-development stage of system engineering, a large amount of design testing and development feedback had led to the creation of an effective system can be used as a viable option of production. I'm now aware that system engineers have to consider the existing level of technology and the willing of consumers to buy it before the construction of the system. And that's it. Thanks.